Somewhere in California, right now, a killer is walking free. Not because he was never suspected, not because there were no clues, but because for over 5 decades he simply vanished. He called himself the Zodiac. He murdered at least 5 people in cold blood. He wrote taunting letters to newspapers, mocked the police, sent encrypted ciphers, some of which remain unsolved to this day. He was never caught. And what makes this case truly terrifying is that he wanted you to know exactly who he was. He craved the attention. He loved the fear. This is the story of the Zodiac Killer, the most chilling unsolved murder case in American history. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case still haunts investigators, cryptographers, and true crime enthusiasts around the world. And you might just sleep with the lights on tonight to understand the Zodiac. You need to understand the world he hunted in. It's 1968. California is alive with contradiction. On one hand, flower power, Woodstock, peace movements, the summer of love. On the other, the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, the Vietnam War, and a country torn apart by chaos. San Francisco and its surrounding areas, Vallejo, Napa, Solano County, were booming. People felt free. Young couples parked at lovers' lanes under the stars. Life felt open and full of possibility. Nobody locked their doors. Nobody suspected that something evil was already watching. Because while California was dancing and dreaming, a predator was selecting his victims. He was organized. He was intelligent. And he had a plan. He didn't just want to kill. He wanted to be famous for it. December 20th, 1968. Lake Herman Road, Benicia, California. It's a cold Friday night. 2 teenagers, David Faraday, 17 years old, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16, are parked at the end of a gravel turnout, a popular hangout spot for local teens. They were on their first date. At approximately 11 p.m., a vehicle pulled up alongside them. What happened next was over in seconds. David was shot once in the head at close range. Betty Lou managed to get out of the car and run. She made it 28 feet. She was shot 5 times in the back. Both teenagers died at the scene. When police arrived, they found no witnesses, no murder weapon, no clear motive. The killer had come, executed 2 innocent teenagers on their very first date, and disappeared into the night. The community was horrified, but nobody could have imagined that this was just the beginning. 7 months later. July 4th, 1969. Blue Rock Springs Park, Vallejo, just 4 miles from the first attack. Mike Mageau, 19, and Darlene Farron, 22, were parked in a lot near the park. It was Independence Day. Fireworks could be heard in the distance. A car pulled up, sat there, then left. Minutes later, it came back. A man got out, approached their car with a bright flashlight, and without a single word, opened fire. Darlene was hit multiple times and died shortly after. Mike was shot in the face, neck, and body, but survived barely. As the attacker walked back to his car, Mike let out a groan. The man turned around, walked back, and shot them both again. Then he calmly drove away. But here's where things take a dark turn. About 40 minutes after the shooting, Vallejo police received a phone call. A man's voice, calm, cold, almost casual, said, "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year." Then he hung up. He wasn't running from his crimes. He was announcing them. 3 weeks later, August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers received letters simultaneously. The San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter contained details about the murders that only the killer could know, details that had never been made public. And each letter came with 1/3 of a 408-symbol cipher, a coded message the killer claimed would reveal his identity. He demanded the newspapers publish the ciphers on their front pages. If they refused, he promised to go on a killing spree, killing a dozen people over the weekend. The newspapers complied. At the bottom of one letter, the killer wrote a chilling signature, a circle with a cross through it, like a gun sight, the symbol of the Zodiac. A school teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife cracked the 408 cipher within days. The decoded message read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all." He went on to say that the people he killed would become his slaves in the afterlife. This wasn't just a killer. This was someone who wanted the world to watch. September 27, 1969. Lake Berryessa, Napa County. Brian Hartnell, 20, and Cecilia Shepard, 22, were college students enjoying a picnic on the shores of the lake. The afternoon was peaceful, quiet. Then a man appeared from the trees. He was wearing something nobody had ever seen before, a black executioner-style hood with a bib attached to it. On the bib was the Zodiac symbol, the circle and cross, stitched in white. He was holding a gun. The man tied them up with pre-cut lengths of rope, something he had clearly prepared in advance. Then he told them, almost conversationally, that he needed their car to escape to Mexico. Brian asked if he was the one responsible for the killings in Vallejo. The man said yes. Then he pulled out a knife and stabbed them both repeatedly. Brian survived. Cecilia did not. She died 2 days later in hospital. Before leaving, the Zodiac did something extraordinary. He walked to Brian's car and used a black marker to write on the door, "Vallejo, December 20th, 68 to July 4th, 69, September 27-69-6:30, by knife." He was keeping score. 2 weeks later, October 11th, 1969, San Francisco. Paul Stein, 29, was a taxi driver and a graduate student at San Francisco State University. He was working a late shift. At approximately 9:55 p.m., a fare got into his cab at the intersection of Mason and Geary Streets, requesting to be taken to Washington and Maple in the Presidio Heights neighborhood. When the cab stopped, the passenger shot Paul Stein once in the head with a .38 caliber pistol. Then, in a move that shocked investigators, the killer tore off a piece of Paul's shirt, wiped down the cab with it to remove fingerprints, and walked away north into the Presidio Park. 3 teenagers in a nearby house witnessed the attack and called the police. Officers arrived within minutes and actually spoke to a man matching the description in the area, but dispatch had incorrectly described the suspect as a black male. The man they spoke to was white. They let him go. The Zodiac Killer may have walked right past the police and disappeared into the night. Days later, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside was a piece of Paul Stein's blood-soaked shirt. Proof. Trophy. Taunt. He wrote, "I am the murderer of the taxi driver over by Washington St. To prove this here is a blood-stained piece of his shirt." Then he made a threat that sent the city into a panic. "School children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." Parents across San Francisco kept their children home. Police were stationed at schools. The city was terrified. The Zodiac was in full control. Between 1969 and 1974, the Zodiac sent at least 37 letters to newspapers and police. Some were taunts. Some were threats. Some contained ciphers, complex coded messages that stumped cryptographers for decades. The most famous unsolved cipher is the 340 cipher, sent in November 1969. For 51 years, it remained uncracked. Then, in December 2020, a team of amateur codebreakers from the US, Australia, and Belgium finally broke it. The decoded message read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me." He misspelled paradise. Some investigators believe this was intentional, to throw off analysis. But one cipher, the 13 symbol, "My name is" cipher sent in 1970, has never been solved. To this day, nobody knows what it says. Some believe it contains his real name. Others believe it was designed to be unsolvable, one final, eternal joke from a killer who always needed to feel smarter than everyone else. Over the decades, investigators and amateur sleuths have pointed fingers at dozens of suspects. But 3 names rise above the rest. Suspect number 1, Arthur Lee Allen. Allen is the most famous Zodiac suspect, and for good reason. He was a convicted child molester with a history of violence. He owned a Zodiac brand watch, the same brand whose logo resembles the killer's symbol. He wore size 10.5 wing walker boots, matching footprints found at a crime scene. A former friend claimed Allen told him, before the murders began, that he wanted to hunt human beings and call himself the Zodiac. His trailer and home were searched multiple times. Investigators found knives, ammunition, and disturbing materials. But fingerprints didn't match. Handwriting didn't match. And DNA, when finally tested, didn't match either. Arthur Lee Allen died of a heart attack in 1992, before investigators could ever formally charge him. Was he the Zodiac? Many believe so. The evidence says otherwise. Suspect number 2, Lawrence Kane. Kane suffered brain damage in a car accident in the 1960s that reportedly changed his personality dramatically. He had connections to Darlene Ferrin, one of the Zodiac's victims, and his handwriting showed some similarities to the killer's letters. He died in 2010, never charged. Suspect number 3, Gary Francis Post. In 2021, over 50 years after the murders, a cold case team called the Case Breakers publicly named Gary Francis Post, a house painter who died in 2018, as the Zodiac Killer. They claimed to have found his name hidden in the unsolved ciphers using anagram techniques. They also pointed to scars on his forehead that matched a composite sketch. The FBI and San Francisco Police Department did not confirm this identification. The case remains officially open. This is the question that has tortured investigators for over 5 decades. How does a killer who taunted police, sent letters, left evidence at crime scenes, and called authorities directly simply never get caught? The answer is a combination of factors that, together, created a perfect storm of failure. First, the era. There was no DNA testing in 1969, no digital databases, no cell phone tracking, no surveillance cameras. Forensic science was primitive compared to today. The tools simply didn't exist. Second, jurisdictional chaos. The Zodiac's crimes spanned multiple counties: Solano, Napa, San Francisco. Each jurisdiction had its own police department, its own investigators, their own egos. Information wasn't shared efficiently. Critical leads fell through the cracks between agencies. Third, the letters. While the letters gave investigators clues, they also gave the Zodiac control of the narrative. He decided what to reveal and when. Every letter was crafted to mislead as much as to inform. Fourth, the composite sketch problem. Witnesses described someone different each time. The famous composite sketch, a heavy-set white male with glasses, may not have even been accurate. The Zodiac may have disguised himself deliberately. And finally, he simply stopped. After 1974, the letters stopped. The murders that could be confirmed stopped. Whether he died, was imprisoned for another crime, moved away, or simply chose to stop, nobody knows. He vanished as quietly as he appeared. In the frenzy of ciphers and suspects and theories, it's easy to lose sight of what this case is really about. People died. David Faraday, 17 years old. On his first date, Betty Lou Jensen, 16 years old, shot 5 times in the back as she ran. Darlene Ferrin, 22 years old, a mother, killed on Independence Day. Cecilia Shepard, 22 years old, a college student, stabbed repeatedly at a peaceful lakeside picnic. Paul Stein, 29 years old, a taxi driver and graduate student just trying to make a living. These were not just names in a case file. They were people with families, dreams, futures, stolen by someone who saw them as nothing more than targets. The Zodiac claimed to have killed 37 people. Most investigators believe the confirmed number is 5, with 2 more surviving. But every single victim deserves to be remembered. The Zodiac Killer didn't just haunt California. He haunted the entire culture. David Fincher's 2007 film Zodiac, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr., is widely considered one of the greatest crime films ever made. It follows the journalists and investigators consumed by the case. Countless books have been written, dozens of documentaries produced, podcasts dedicated entirely to cracking his ciphers. In 2020, When the 340 cipher was finally solved, it made international news, 51 years after it was sent. That's the power of this case. It refuses to be forgotten, because it refuses to be solved. So here we are, over 55 years later. The Zodiac Killer is almost certainly dead. Most investigators believe he would be well into his 80s or 90s if he were still alive today. But the case? The case is still open. The San Francisco Police Department still lists it as an active investigation. The FBI still maintains a file. And somewhere out there are people who may know the truth. Family members, old friends, people who noticed something strange about someone they loved and never said a word. The Zodiac got exactly what he wanted. He wanted to be famous. He wanted to be feared. He wanted to be remembered forever. And tragically, he got all three. But here's what he didn't count on. We remember his victims more. We remember David and Betty Lou. We remember Darlene and Cecilia and Paul. We remember that behind every cold case file are real human beings whose lives were cut short by someone who thought he was smarter than everyone. Maybe he was. Or maybe the truth is still out there, waiting, in an unsolved cipher, in an old letter, in the memory of someone who's never spoken up. The Zodiac may have had the last laugh for 55 years, but the story isn't over yet. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. These cases matter. Sharing them matters. If you want more deep dives into history's darkest mysteries, subscribe and hit the bell. New videos every week. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and never stop asking questions.